Greetings, film fans. It's time to go once more into Latin America for a cinema special. More specific than that, the South American continent, the South American region. And more specific, once more, this takes place in Brazil. And what's taking place is this awesome little action-adventure film from the mid-1980s called Emerald Forest. I love this film. And I'm going to give you a whole bunch of great geographic background on it here to warm you up and get you learning as you watch this fairly straightforward but intriguing film from the mid-80s. 85, directed by John Boorman, who, for us geography geek types or people just like to see different parts of the world, Boorman is a great director because he, in almost all his films, uses the landscape, the vegetation, the terrain, the climate, the biomes. He uses it as an integral part of the storyline for many of his films, meaning it affects the action, or it's a character in and of itself, or an obstacle, or it's a challenge. And he's really good at this. Now, if you've never heard of John Boorman, or maybe it resonates in your head that you have, he's been around for a long time and made some films you might recognize by name. One called Deliverance, a really famous one out of America. One called Beyond Rangoon out of Burma. Taylor of Panama, guess where that was set. One called Queen and Country, he won a bunch of awards for. My favorite was another one from the 80s called Excalibur, which is my favorite retelling of the Arthurian legend. But in all of these cases and all the other films he has, landscape features prominently. Now, this is an old film, and I know some of you will probably be put off by it because it's a little long, and it's just a great piece of cinematography because Boorman uses landscapes, and you're going to see beautiful Amazonian landscapes just panning around. And it's great because some of these landscapes simply don't exist anymore, and because it was made in the 80s, that's pre-CGI and stuff. So way back in the day, when I was a youngster, people actually had to go film on location if they wanted it to look like it was supposed to look like, and that's what Boorman did for all of his films. He probably still does because he's so diehard. And so what you see is really the landscape of the rainforest in Brazil and the real people who live there in a real city that was filmed on location. So I love it. Released in 1985, filmed for several years prior to its release, and that's important for reasons I'll come back to in a second. It is 110 minutes long. I know, almost 2 hours, and this is going to be more painful for you. It's in multiple languages. Yes, most of the stuff that you'll need to understand is going to be in English, but there'll also be speaking Portuguese and native Amazonian dialects. That figures important to this story as well. But why the Portuguese? Well, most of Latin America was colonized by Spain back in the day, including most of Western North America. But Brazil was colonized by Portugal. So most of Latin America speaks Spanish. Brazil, the official language, is Portuguese, and you're going to hear that spoken. But again, you're also going to hear native Amazonian dialects because this is mostly taking place in the Amazon rainforest. Aha! One of the most famous, if not the most famous, rainforest on planet Earth, also known as Amazonia, aka the Amazon jungle. It is a moist broadleaf forest that covers most of the Amazon River basin of South America. Of course, the Amazon, the biggest river on planet Earth, most volume of water that encompasses most of the continent and certainly virtually all of Brazil. The majority of the Amazonian rainforest is located in Brazil. Brazil has something like 65% of the entire thing is in the state of Brazil. Peru has 13 or 14%, Colombia has about 10%, and then all of the surrounding countries have pieces of it. Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana, Suriname, French Guiana. Now, the Amazon represents over half of the planet's remaining rainforest and comprises the largest and most biodiverse tract of tropical rainforest in the world, with an estimated 390 billion individual trees comprising over 16,000 species. That's just the trees, man. That's not counting all the other stuff. So a biggest chunk of rainforest still left on planet Earth. The basin itself, I should give you some numbers, honestly, not because I want you to memorize the numbers, but to give you a sense of the vastness of this place, which is going to be depicted in the film. The basin, the Amazon River Basin itself, and the rainforest on top of it encompasses 7 million square kilometers. 7 million square kilometers, that's 2.7 million square miles. 2.7 million square miles. Of that area that's the basin, 5.5 million square kilometers are still covered with trees, still covered with rainforest. I know we hear a lot in today's world, and I've heard it my whole life about how we're losing the rainforest, they're cutting down the rainforest, they're destroying the rainforest is disappearing. Yes, that's true, and it's an issue. It's an environmental issue you should consider, and it's going to be depicted in this film. However, this is a huge place, and Brazil, for all of modern history, has been growing in population and moving people into the rainforest and by building cities in the rainforest and roadways and interstates and lumbering operations. So yes, this is an issue, but it's such a huge place. It's still mostly covered with trees. I don't know how much longer we can say that, but it's still a really big place with still a whole lot of trees. And it's one of the most extremely biodiverse parts of our planet. The Amazon rainforest. Okay, well, what's a rainforest then? For those of you who haven't taken physical geography or climatography, anything like that, I'm not going to go into a whole lecture here just on biomes, but I do like to point out a few things to help you understand. Rainforest, period, are located in equatorial regions, that is, areas around the equator. And I'm going to jump ahead. The setting for this story is a major city called Belém in Brazil, and it is less than 1 degree south of the equator. Literally, it's almost on the equator. And most rainforests all around the planet, including Indonesia and other parts of the world, are around the equator. And when you are near the equator, what's the climate like? What's the weather like? Well, you don't have seasons. There's no seasonality. Here in the temperate parts of the planet, where we live in North America or Europe, or wherever you're watching this from, we have 4 seasons. Winter, spring, summer, fall. You don't have that in the tropics. It's just warm every day. So in the tropical rainforest, you can have tropical deserts too, and they're different. But tropical rainforest, it's pretty much 75 to 85 degrees every single day, 365 days a year. Period. And it's called rainforest. This specific vegetative biome is called rainforest because it pretty much rains every day too. Yes, there are patches of it where it's a little drier in one part of the year and a little wetter in another part of the year, but they pretty much get a lot of rain all the time. Daily rain is quite probable in most of the tropical rainforest. Maybe it doesn't rain 1 day a month, maybe it doesn't rain 2 days a month, but it pretty much rains every day. And you're going to see that in the film too. These are very warm, moist, wet places. And how does that affect the vegetation? Well, trees grow really big and it's covered in jungle. Everything's growing all the time and it's vastly biodiverse because there's tons of creatures and fungus and bacteria and mammals and reptiles that were just going at it, replicating and evolving. And that's why you have such a rich diversity of species of everything in the tropical rainforest. It's just a big crucible of growth, 24/7, 365 throughout the year. Now, what that means, and you're going to see this depicted in the film, is the reason I bring it up, is even though it's a lush vegetation covering every square inch of the place, we call it jungle because it's like impenetrable because there's so much growth, it actually makes for really poor soils. So when it rains every single day, that daily rain washes out all the nutrient component of soil. So they're really not great places for agriculture. In fact, the natives that live there, or maybe some people still practice this, who convert to agriculture, it's called slash and burn agriculture. If you want to grow crops, you have to cut down all the trees and burn them all to make instant fertilizer so crops will grow for this year. But then that washes out in time, so then you move on to another plot. So slash and burn agriculture is a big thing in areas like this because the soils are poor, and you'll see it depicted in the film because rooting systems of these really huge trees, they go, I guess it's horizontal, not lateral. because the tree roots, even gigantic trees, go out to get the nutrients on the floor of the rainforest. They don't penetrate like other roots do in other parts of the world deeper into the soil. So they just actually can just push over the trees with bulldozers and stuff. And again, you'll see it. The dude will even say it in the film. The other thing about a tropical rainforest that's hot every single day and wet every single day is if you're hanging out there, you don't wear a lot of clothes. And now we're getting into the native, indigenous things here. What's going to be depicted in this film are indigenous folks, uncontacted tribes, we'll call them. Folks still living a hunter-gatherer subsistence lifestyle that all humans used to do 50,000 years ago, but very few of us do in today's world. But some parts of the rainforest, they still do. And if it's 80 degrees and raining every day, you don't wear a lot of clothes in those circumstances when you're running around hunting and doing stuff. I'm telling you this on purpose, not to be titillating, but to warn you, they try to be very realistic and accurate with portrayal of indigenous folks in this particular biome. They don't wear clothes. So there is a whole lot of full frontal nudity. So prepare for that. It's not pornographic. It's like looking at a National Geographic, okay? So for those weak of heart and constitution that don't like to see nude humans, this film may not be for you. But having said that, it's pretty G-rated. I know it shows breasts, so maybe it should be rated X, but it's pretty tame stuff. But you've been warned if you don't like to see things like that. Now let's get to those people who are walking around naked. The film's real kind of thrust here, the avenue, the vehicle for action is indigenous peoples of Brazil. And there are quite a few of them. Indigenous peoples in Brazil comprise a large number of distinct ethnic groups. We might even say like tribes is a word I use always kind of lightly because I don't know if it offends anybody, but there is a huge number of distinct ethnic groups / tribes who inhabit the country we now call Brazil. And prior to European contact in 1500, there might have been 2,000 to 3,000 different ethnic groups / tribes which spoke quite a variety, if not 2,000 distinct different languages. Many of those 2,000 different nations / tribes, of course, have been annihilated since the Europeans took over Latin America, well, all of the Americas. Mostly as a consequence of European settlement, but also disease that wiped out huge numbers of folks. And if you know any history at all, and you know about Latin American history or prehistory or conquest history, you think of, oh, well, the Aztecs had this really huge civilization in what's now Mexico. Yeah, like 20, 30 million people. It's full-on civilization, cities. And the Inca down in South America, yeah, they actually had some cities too and a full-on civilization. But there were a whole bunch of other people all around the rest of this area, like millions and millions of people, but in smaller, distinct nations / tribes all across the Amazon basin. And indeed, some of them actually had some kind of bigger city-states closer to the coast. But all of this area was populated. But again, unfortunately, many of them got wiped out during the European age of imperialism that saw the takeover of the entire continent. However, there are still indigenous people here in Brazil and all over the world. Estimates put total populations of indigenous folks around the world, people who are obviously uncontacted and definitely indigenous, or those who self-identify themselves as indigenous. Worldwide, 220 to 350 million indigenous folks. That's like 5 or 6% of the entire Earth's population, so that's kind of a big deal. If you looked at the whole world, you're looking at maybe 5,000 distinct nations / ethnic groups / tribes in 60 or 70 different countries. But Brazil's got the most uncontacted peoples. What? Yeah. There are still, believe it or not, uncontacted tribes on planet Earth that don't know that Columbus showed up yet in the New World because they've never seen any white people or Western people or connected or contacted with what we call the civilized world here in the 21st century. I actually didn't believe that the first time I saw this film. I thought it was all a fictional account. but actually the estimated numbers of uncontacted people, again, people who have no clue about the modern world, those numbers are actually going up right now. But where are the people at that we're going to see in this film? Let's get back to that and try to finish up this intro. Sorry, it's a long one. I really like this film, and I'm having fun with this. Okay, this film, I don't know that they ever actually reference it by name or tell you exactly where they're at, but I'm going to because it is filmed on location, and I did some research, and I know exactly where they're at for this film, even though it was produced 30 years ago. The city action you're going to see depicted in the film is a great town called Belém, Brazil. Belém, you know what, I'm just going to show you on this map here. Here's all of Brazil, the 5th largest country on planet Earth that encompasses 60 to 65% of this gigantic rainforest we're talking about. And Belém is right up here, just south of the equator. Seriously, like at 1 degree southerly latitude. That's like, you're pretty hot there. And it's right there here in the northern part of the country. Here's the Amazon River that goes this way, but a lot of other tributaries and smaller rivers, smaller than the Amazon, flow up this way, and Belém is right there on the water. Now, Belém's actually kind of a big deal. It's a Brazilian municipality. It's the capital and largest city of the state of Para. This whole huge state up here is called Para in the country's north. Belém is the gateway, one of the major gateways to the Amazon River altogether. It's a busy port. Tons of stuff is shipped out of there. Tons of stuff is shipped in there. It has major airports, a huge bus, coach, train stations. It lies approximately 100 kilometers upriver from the Atlantic Ocean on the Para River. Now, I know that sounds a little confusing because, you know, we think of the Amazon as this big river flowing this way, but the Para is this one little section of it. They're right there going out. And it's Belém is only separated from the major mouth of the Amazon, or the major tributaries there, by this, what's this island called? It's a delta island. I think it's the largest fluvial island on planet Earth for you geologists who really like that. It's Maranhão. Maranhão Island is this whole chunk right here. So Belém's on one side of that, and then the Amazon, it's all kind of where the Amazon, the mighty Amazon dumps out. And Para is the biggest port city on the mouth of the Amazon. Estimated population 1.4 million people in the city proper, and probably 2.5 million when you consider the greater metropolitan area around it. It's the 11th most populous city in Brazil, as well as the 16th most important city by economic standing. So Belém, basically sitting on the equator, a hot spot, literally, climatically speaking, and a big city and an active city to boot. I actually can't wait to visit there. I really want to go there. I think, I'm almost positive, Anthony Bourdain, if you know who that is, did one of his shows from there. What are all his shows called? Unbound, Unchained, something like that. No Reservations. He did one from Belém. I'm going to find it and link it into this podcast here for those that want to see something from on the street of Belém itself. Now, that's the city. Most of the action of the film takes place in the jungle, though, in the Amazon rainforest jungle. And I actually can tell you exactly where that was filmed too, and that's rare. You rarely can you figure out exactly, especially an old film where they filmed. But it's quite important, and it plays into the setting of the film and in real life. The jungle sequences and scenes you're going to see are in and around the Tucuruí Dam. Is a concrete gravity dam on the Tocantins River. I'm sorry, I said Tucuruí River. It's the Tocantins River. So it's the Tucuruí Dam on the Tocantins River. That Tocantins River flows almost due south to north, dumping into the Para. And it's a concrete gravity dam in the state of Para, Brazil. The main purpose of the dam is for hydroelectric power production and navigation between the upper and lower Tocantins River. And it produces a whole heck of a lot of hydroelectricity, my friends. This dam that you're going to see depicted in the film, and you're going to see it depicted being built. And it's real. The filmmaker actually went in while they were making this dam, and it's the 5th largest energy production center on planet Earth, the Tucuruí Dam. While it was being built, they filmed this movie in and around it. I love that. I love that. So super real. And hydroelectricity is super important for Brazil because in 2010, just 5 years ago, hydropower accounted for 80% of Brazilian electricity production. 80% of the lights being turned on in Brazil is produced by hydroelectricity. Not coal, not oil, not even gas, not even nuke, okay? Hydroelectricity. As you might assume from a well-watered state that has the Amazon River Basin, the world's biggest river system, in it, they have a lot of dams and a lot of hydroelectricity production. And this one, the one scene being built in this film, is actually the first huge large-scale hydroelectric project in the Brazilian Amazon rainforest back in the 70s/80s. I mean, holy hydro. This Tucuruí Dam is the 5th largest power production station in the world, as I already said. And that's all energy. I'm not saying it's the 5th largest hydro. I'm saying it's the 5th largest energy producing plant on planet Earth. The Three Gorges Dam in China is number 1. Of the top 8 energy producing plants on the planet, of the top 10 energy producing plants on the planet, 8 of them are hydroelectric. And this Tucuruí is number 5. So it's a big deal. The other 2 are nukes, by the way. Phase 1 construction of this dam began in November of 1975 and was completed in 1984. There's been several phases, but I'm giving you the timeline here. Think about how I started this like 20 minutes ago. This film was produced during Phase 1 construction of the dam in real life. The film was released in 1985, just after. They completed this film roughly the same time that they completed this real-life dam. But I should get to the dam story itself, shouldn't I? Now you know the setting. Now you know a little bit about indigenous folks in Brazil and the world. Now you know a little bit about rainforest. The story itself is pretty straightforward and simple. I just wanted you to learn stuff so you'll greater appreciate what you're getting ready to see. This is a pretty simple to follow action-adventure story, supposedly based on a true story about a family that lost a child who was kidnapped by an indigenous tribe in the rainforest and disappeared for a decade. And what you're going to see depicted here is this family's decade-long search to find their son and the hijinks that ensue once they do find him. So without any further ado, without any more learning, without any more geographic information being packed into your head, enjoy Emerald Forest, and in 110 minutes, come back and we'll chat about some closing geographic themes you saw depicted in the film. Party on.